Space Invaders, a video game that needs no introduction. A simple arcade shooter that's had an everlasting impact upon video gaming since its release in 1978, catapulting video games from just a simple novelty to an industry that remains ever-present even today. Even the alien sprites themselves remain a staple in pop culture. Such a simple game, yet so fun, and so influential. But despite that incredibly misleading introduction, we're not going to talk about Space Invaders. We're going to talk about Space Invaders. TI Invaders, which is Space Invaders. Sort of. Released in 1981 for the Texas Instruments TI-99-4A microcomputer, TI Invaders is, in short, a Space Invaders clone. One could even go as far as calling it a Space Invaders ripoff, due to the almost pixel-identical sprites for the aliens. Besides the gameplay, of course. But TI Invaders does have some extra tricks up its sleeve that do set it apart slightly from its clear inspiration. Only enough that you can count them on your fingers, but hey, it's something, right? Now, for most folks, I probably don't need to explain the gameplay of Space Invaders and its clones. However, for those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 40 years, first off I want to say welcome to 2015! A lot has happened since you locked yourself in that Fallout shelter of yours. But yes, how Space Invaders works. Let's get back to that. In Space Invaders, as well as TI Invaders, a bunch of invaders from space are invading. You play the role of a lone missile base at the bottom of the screen who has to shoot down the intruders from beyond our atmosphere as they slowly line dance their way closer and closer to the bottom of the screen. The more aliens you shoot, the faster they become, slowly increasing the difficulty until you finally clear the entire wave. And once those are killed, well, another wave of starborn trespassers shows up and you gotta go shoot them too. Rinse and repeat until you run out of lives. Beyond this, you have a set of bunkers to help defend yourself from the invaders. However, said bunkers can be chipped away by both enemy fire as well as your own fire, so they aren't something to rely on at all times. Occasionally, a UFO will also appear at the top of the screen. If you manage to shoot this before it crosses from one side to the other, you're awarded bonus points. That's the basic gist of Space Invaders, which also applies to TI Invaders as one could assume. However, as I mentioned before, there are a few little extra differences between TI Invaders and Space Invaders. For one, there's no music in TI Invaders. The original Space Invaders had a short, 4-note loop that increased in tempo along with the speed of the on-screen invaders. However, TI Invaders lacks this. There are small blip noises when the aliens move, but otherwise all you get are pretty standard arcade-ish sound effects. TI Invaders also has two selectable difficulty levels, merely aggressive and downright nasty. For the most part, they play very similarly. The only major difference is that the invaders in the merely aggressive difficulty simply fire shots at you at random, whereas in downright nasty, they time their shots based on your position below them, making things slightly more tricky as you can imagine. You also earn more points for shooting the aliens in the higher difficulty setting, so if you're obsessed with large numbers, downright nasty is the difficulty to go for. Furthermore, as you progress further into the game, the designs of the invaders themselves start to change, from the classic designs to more original shapes and forms. This adds a nice small cosmetic change the further you play, even though it is little more than just that, a small cosmetic change. Also worth noting is the scoring for shooting the bonus UFO. In the original Space Invaders, shooting the UFO would only net you a fixed amount of bonus points, whereas in TI Invaders, the amount of extra points you get is based on how close to the center of the UFO your shot is. Hitting the edges of the UFO equals less points, closer to the center, more points. As such, a little extra skill is required to not only hit the UFO, but also attain the maximum possible bonus points from it. Finally, the biggest addition to TI Invaders is the bonus rounds. While in Space Invaders, clearing a wave of line-dancing aliens simply brought you to another wave, TI Invaders instead brings you to a bonus round with a single UFO. If you shoot it, the flying saucer starts heading in the opposite direction at a slightly faster speed, It also becomes slightly smaller each time you hit it, making it increasingly more difficult to hit the UFO. It's a decent way to rack up some extra points between waves, though. Plus, these bonus rounds genuinely help break up the usual routine of shoot some invaders, rinse and repeat. As for how the game actually plays, well, as I've stated approximately 14 times during this video, and yes, I have been counting, it's Space Invaders. I probably don't need to say much more than that. However, since I might as well say more than that, TI Invaders does run very smoothly, and the controls are very nice and responsive. This is also one of the few TI-99 4A games that I'd honestly say are perfectly playable with just the keyboard. All you need are 2 keys to go left and right, and 1 to shoot. No faffing about with those awkwardly placed arrow keys here. Of course, you can also use a joystick if you so desire. And, well, that's TI Invaders. It's Space Invaders, but not entirely. And if you have yourself a TI-99 4A computer, this is definitely one of the must-have games for the system. It's simple, it's basic, hell, it's pretty much a rip-off of another game. But it's still quite fun and adds a few little nice twists to the Space Invaders formula. Some very small twists, but nice twists nonetheless. And as always, ladies, gentlemen, and variations thereupon, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all again soon.